That's my cat Lulu. She's perfectly healthy, but I'm not waiting for issues to pop up. I'm feeding her new Purina One whole body support, proactive nutrition supporting her 5 key systems. It's Purina One's most advanced formula, helping us stay ahead at mealtime so we can stay ahead for a lifetime.
Purina One, a difference from day one. Try new Purina One whole body support. Just say, Alexa, add to cart.
Alexa, add to cart.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Content warning, this episode contains homophobia as well as discussion of murder and rape.
So, as I'm sure most of you are aware, we did a series of episodes recently on the murder of Scott Macklem. That crime was committed by a man now known as Temujin Kensu, and we explored why we believe that he is the guilty man in some detail. We said at the time we did those episodes that it was our intent to continue to do future episodes, and here's another episode on it. We contacted the Port Huron, Michigan Police Department. The murder of Mr. Macklem occurred in Port Huron, and we asked them to send us whatever investigative materials they had in their files that they were allowed to share. And they did. They sent us, I believe, like 115 pages of police reports, 138 pages of attachments to those reports. And I should say at the outset that this is not exclusive material. I'm aware of at least one other podcast who was given this material. I'm not sure if what they presented from it or in how much detail, but there's certainly a number of things in here that we feel are worth talking about, and we will do so.
My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases.
We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is the murder of Scott Macklem, the guilt of Temujin Kensu, the police investigation. Right at the outset, I want to mention a couple of quick notes. As we did in our previous episodes, we were always going to refer to Temujin Kensu as Temujin Kensu, because that's apparently the name he likes using at the moment. But over the course of his life, he's used a number of other names and aliases. And there are occasions when he is referred to by those other names or aliases in these police documents. So just to avoid confusion, whenever we see him referred to by another name, we're just going to change it to Temujin Kensu or Kensu.
Absolutely.
Some of these documents we'll probably paraphrase and not read exactly. I mentioned that as well. That's just more for clarity and not to change meaning. One thing about these documents is when they came to us, they were already redacted to remove personal information about people and witnesses. And so because of that, I think we will likely be able to post these in our group.
Yeah, we want to review them first just to make sure there's nothing that slipped through the cracks. But I think these are things that we would want the public to have.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff in here that is worthy of discussion. And speaking of discussion, there has been lately quite a bit of discussion online about this case and about the information we have presented about the case, much of which has not been given attention or coverage in the past. And certainly we've gotten emails from people who frankly are upset by that, who feel they've been sold a bill of goods because so much information about this case was not presented to them, and they feel duped into believing something that was not true.
Yeah, from nearly the outset of this case, and frankly, the predominant actors in this being the traditional media outlets in Michigan, the tone has been essentially Kensu as the victim of the case, and sort of assuming and swallowing wholesale the defense's framing of a wrongful conviction, and not analyzing or really looking into that at all. And sort of that's how it's been, and that's how it's been going. And this is, I mean, I'm shocked. Knowing what we know now, I'm absolutely shocked that it feels like in many respects we are the first to critique that or come with a definitive viewpoint that's different from that, because I don't understand how that's happened.
I don't understand either. And I would say if you've been duped, don't feel bad. And if you've covered the case, let's just all try to cover the case more fairly and more accurately in the future. And I think Anya's going to talk about that at the end of the show.
At the end of the show, I have some suggestions, some polite suggestions. And I do want to say at the outset that to me, it's really not about guilt or innocence anymore, because we feel very strongly that this is a guilty man who's exactly where he needs to be. But I would say that people can feel differently and they can come to a different viewpoint. What I'm asking for is more factual, eliminating things that are incorrect or harmful, and bringing up things that are helpful. And that can have a whole host of diverse viewpoints, from people thinking, well, I don't know if it still rises to the point where I would vote guilty. That's fine. That's an intellectually honest position to take. I have no issue with that. It's not about making everyone adopt our viewpoint. It's more about how can we cover this in a way that's not like disgusting and toxic for victims of rape and domestic violence. So that's what I'll be talking about. It's going to be more general than just, oh, everyone should agree with our take. No, that's not necessary. But it is necessary that we cover this responsibly and don't platform a bunch of harmful stuff that kind of is bad. But we'll get into that later.
We'll get into that later. Certainly, I've seen a number of arguments in this case that, in my mind, are intellectually dishonest, to say the least, if not downright offensive. One of them is people say, yes, this obviously was a targeted crime. Whoever did this was targeting Scott Macklem. And yeah, we have a person who was threatening him and had a history of rape and domestic violence, but maybe Scott Macklem was involved in other bad stuff too, and maybe that's what caused the murder to happen. And golly, maybe if the police had just turned over one more stone, they would have found this alleged evidence of Scott being involved in something else. And I just want to say that is profoundly stupid.
Whoa.
And it's really offensive because you're dragging this man's name through the mud, this murder victim's name through the mud. And I shouldn't have to say this, ladies and gentlemen, but we live in the real world. And in the real world, we look at the evidence we have. We don't speculate and say, oh, maybe this evidence exists. And maybe if someone did something else, they may have stumbled across some other evidence. That's not how it works. We look at the evidence we have. And the evidence we have is that the only person who was stalking and threatening Scott Macklem was Temujin Kensu. And the evidence we have is that this young man, this murder victim, was an upright citizen who did not do anything wrong other than to date someone that Temujin Kensu considered to be his property. And it is just...
Which isn't wrong. He should have dated her. They were young and in love. I mean, it's like it's just that this weirdo...
That was his only high-risk choice.
Yeah, which it shouldn't have been high risk.
It shouldn't have been high risk.
This guy hates women.
And I also want to say that ever since the murder, people connected to Mr. Kensu have spent a great deal of time and effort to try to prove that Mr. Macklem, Scott Macklem, was involved in something nefarious, and they've come up with absolutely nothing. You've heard on our program that Herb Welzer, an investigator for the defense, conceded there's no evidence that Scott Macklem was involved with drugs or anything else nefarious. So let's not pretend, oh golly, if they had turned over one more stone or turned over one more page, the police would have found something. That is a stupid argument, and it's intellectually dishonest.
I just want to add to that, listen, if there's some mud to drag a victim's name through, like, we have to go where the evidence is. And if there's evidence of some drug dealing or some high-risk behavior or some feud with a different person, I'm all for bringing that up. Maybe it's painful to the victim's family. Maybe it's upsetting for those who knew him, but you got to bring that up. But you don't just get to say, well, we didn't find any of that. But what if it existed? It's like, but you didn't find it. So what are we talking about here? Like, it's like it's like a con racket at this point.
We live in the real world. Let's look at the evidence we have. Let's not use our imaginations and try to imagine other evidence.
And let's be very clear. We live in the real world. We don't live in an Agatha Christie novel. You don't get to say, well, the police didn't find it, but they didn't look hard enough. If the police have a good suspect, they're going to look at that person. They're not going to waste a bunch of time, doing somersaults trying to find, oh, well, everyone says that Scott wasn't involved in drugs. But what if he was? Like, you have to go where the evidence is. It's not play pretend. They're not writing a novel where you have to go through a bunch of twists and turns to get to the ultimate. Like, it's a facetious argument. It sounds good, and it sounds like something that's easy to repeat all over the internet, but it is facetious.
Yes. And along those lines, I just wanted to mention that there's material in these files that indicates, some have suggested, oh, maybe it was someone else who was actually stalking and threatening Scott. Maybe Crystal had a mysterious other ex-boyfriend who was making these threats. Who knows? There's evidence in these files, including some stuff we read before about a time when Scott was stalked in his place of employment by a man later identified by people who witnessed it as Temujin Kensu. And there is also another incident here that I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to note again that this material has been redacted. I guess whenever there's a redaction, we should say blank.
Yeah, or redaction.
Or redaction. Do you want Anya to read this thing at the top of page 3 of our notes?
Sure thing. So this is
It begins on the above date.
Okay. I'm going to zoom in so I don't mess this up. All right. So, quote, on the above date, these investigators responded to the office of Redacted in Croswell and talked with Redacted and his wife, Redacted, and also Redacted. In regards to the license numbers that had been turned over to Redacted stated that Scott had been concerned about Redacted's relationship with John Lamar.
That's Temujin Kensu.
That is Temujin Kensu. As Redacted had indicated to him about Lamar's, aka Temujin Kensu's, unusual behavior. On one occasion, sometime in the latter part of the summer of '86, Scott had been over to Kensu's cottage in Lakeport and had observed these license plates affixed on a red Opel, a blue Olds Cutlass, and a motorcycle, so jotted the plates down and gave them to Redacted to see if she could have an acquaintance try to get the ownership on these. Scott had indicated to his mother that he believed these license plates were being switched around on different vehicles. Scott also conveyed to his mother that he felt these vehicles were driving past their home on various occasions, mostly at night. These plate numbers were turned over to Sanilac County Deputy Hall after the death of Scott Macklem.
Let's stop there. So basically, Mr. Macklem is sleuthing his own murder before it happens.
He's like, let's just be clear. Switching license plates is almost certainly what happened when it came to Kensu's mode of transport in this case.
And he has clearly witnessed suspicious activity in front of his home, people driving past his home in suspicious ways, and he is specifically linking it to vehicles under the control of Mr. Kensu. So this, again, is yet more evidence, as if we even needed it, that he was being threatened and stalked by this man, Mr. Kensu.
Can I keep reading to show what they found here?
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay. So, quote, and in turn furnished to these investigators, these plates were found to be on vehicles registered to a Redacted. These being a Honda motorcycle, Redacted, and an Olds Cutlass and a red Opel, registered to Redacted. Redacted didn't put proper plates on the vehicles. The Olds and the Opel had been observed by these investigators on a prior visit to the Button area. The motorcycle, according to info supplied by Redacted, is presently at Redacted Honda shop in Flint for work to be done on it.
So that's it. So
and what it's and quote, it is believed that the defendant had acquired the Olsen cycle from Redacted. So they have a sense of where he got them from, and we're seeing these plate switching and that he is connected with people who are kind of
harassing him and threatening him.
But that Kensu is connected with people who are supplying him and furnishing him with vehicles.
Which is very crucial.
When we started the murder sheet, we didn't really know if podcasting was even going to work out for us in the long run. Like, what if no one listens to us? That would be awkward. I'm really glad we tuned out those doubts and went for it, because it's been an absolute dream come true. But the kind of uncertainty we face is what stops people from betting on themselves, chasing their dreams, and starting their own businesses.
For all of you out there looking to kickstart your own dreams, partnering with Shopify is one of the best decisions you can make. It gets you on the right track from day one. They take the uncertainty out of business.
Shopify is your one-stop commerce platform that supports millions of businesses around the world.
Shopify makes you efficient and fast. You can upload new products, improve existing products. Shopify's AI tools can help you with product descriptions, page headlines, and better product photography.
And don't worry about nobody buying your products. They help you get the word out. Shopify puts the power of a whole marketing team behind you. You can create email and social media campaigns with just a few clicks.
Shopify supports you with inventory management, international shipping, processing returns, and more. Whatever the challenge, they're there to make things quicker and more convenient. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/msheet. Go to shopify.com/msheet. That's shopify.com/msheet.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with a Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with a Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about cars. As we know, Kensu, after shooting Scott Macklem to death, Kensu drove away in a vehicle that has never been found. So let's talk about Kensu and his relationship, for lack of a better word, with cars.
Do you want me to read this?
There's a part of it where I want to read later, but I think this one I'll just read. A person who knew Mr. Kensu and didn't want anything further to do with him. He said, quote, Kensu has a number of friends all around, and he is always borrowing cars and is always changing cars so the car could be from almost anywhere and belong to almost anyone. That's an interesting pattern of behavior.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty significant pattern of behavior given the nature of this crime.
I also want to read an excerpt here. This is from an interview the police did with a woman who had a previous relationship with Mr. Kensu. Quote, in talking to Redacted, she stated that Temujin had a lot of girlfriends, that he always has girls who have money or would have to give him money, and they had cars because he would like to take and drive their cars, which she stated would have been many different cars, or trade them where they could drive his car so as long as he had one of their cars to drive, end quote. So again, a pattern of behavior where he is accessing and using a wide variety of vehicles. And if Mr. Macklem's observations are accurate, he's also changing the license plates on those vehicles from time to time.
Seems kind of significant.
And talking about borrowing cars and stuff, certainly a pretty big issue in his relationship with Crystal was that he always wanted her car keys.
Yeah.
He always wanted to use her car.
Yeah. Which sounds weird, but not in the context of a guy who's first of all, violent and expects to get what he wants, but also a guy who is consistently switching up cars for, reasons that are not exactly super clear.
And there's another thing I don't think we need to read it. It's basically saying the same thing. Someone is saying he has this habit of borrowing cars and using other people's cars.
So it's not just, what you're saying is it's not just one person making this odd claim. It's multiple people saying, oh yeah, that's what Kensu does.
Exactly. People have really treated Crystal horribly. This is a young woman who was beaten and raped and terrorized, and who had the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with brutally murdered. And she was brave enough to go and stand up and face that man in court and tell the truth. And her words brought justice to this case. But ever since then, she has been smeared and slimed in the press, and she has been harassed. And some people who do that think they're acting for whatever. I don't know.
For justice. For Temujin.
And maybe some people who have done some of those things have gotten inaccurate information or incomplete information and believe something about her that isn't so. But she told the truth. The defense investigator told us, I have no evidence she lied. And as we're going to hear in this program, a number of other people have stories very, very similar to the story Crystal told. She told the truth and people smeared her for it.
People continue to do so.
People continue to do this. There's this self-published book on Mr. Kensu that just came out, and there is a section on that where the person says, well, I'm not saying Crystal killed him, but here's the reasons why it's suspicious. There's no reason why it's suspicious.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
I'm sorry.
Don't be a rape apologist.
Yeah, don't be I think don't be a rape apologist should probably be like something you shouldn't have to say within true crime, but I think it's worth stating here because a lot of people are rape apologists in this case. And I agree. Crystal is always touted out. Crystal's the whipping girl of this case for people because she's the person who put Temujin in prison, right?
And by doing so, she saved lives.
But let's just be clear. She's the whipping girl for that reason. And I think a lot of people have the sort of wrong idea that, well, because she was so important, she was the only one to come forward about some of this stuff. Right. So like that people are saying, oh, well, she's the only one who talks about the rape. She's the only one who talks about the physical abuse. She's the only one who talks about the ninja stuff. Oh, isn't it so funny that all these hicks from Michigan didn't understand that he had an interest in Asian culture and they all maligned him for it and they all think it's about ninjas. Other people corroborated what she was saying. She's not coming out with this wild story that isn't backed up. And that's very clear from this police file. That's what's so shocking to me. It's clear from this police file that immediately people were saying, oh yeah, this weird stuff, I saw it too.
Yes.
And of course, and anyone, I'm going to say this, people joking about the ninja stuff, people joking about this and that, like, knock it off. Like, if you're doing it out of ignorance, fine, but knock it off and also apologize because, I mean, this isn't funny. This is how her abuse took place. And over the course of our reporting, you're going to hear again and again that these same exact things, this is just what he was doing. It's bizarre and weird, but it's what he was doing. And it's not just Crystal saying that.
Don't blame the messenger.
Don't shoot the messenger. And also, like, to be clear, like, you're joking about somebody's experience being, like, tortured sexually and physically by a man for months. And she's not the only woman who went through that. And it's not appropriate. It's not funny. It's not ha-ha. It's disgusting. And we feel really passionate, and this is what I'm going to get to in the end. We feel really passionately, like, if you're going to cover this case, cover it responsibly. Whatever conclusion you come to in the end, you don't get to essentially do this to people who are victims of rape and abuse, regardless of whether you think that's good or bad for your narrative.
So we're talking about cars. What about the car that, pardon me, that Mr. Kensu was using at the time he was arrested? This was a 1977 Mercury Marquis. That car was searched. Anya, I'm on the top of page 5. Why don't you tell us what they found in that car?
Quote, on November 24th, 1986, a search warrant was obtained to make search of the 1977 Mercury Marquis, redacted, which was the vehicle of the suspect had in his possession at the time of his arrest in Troy, Michigan. The inventory search made by the Troy police had indicated that Army-type articles were in the trunk of the vehicle. On the above date, detectives Bounds and Hudson responded to Redacted located at Redacted, where the vehicle was impounded, and did make search of the vehicle. An olive drab Army-type jacket was confiscated from the trunk of the vehicle, which is to be submitted to the crime lab for nitrate tests to be determined if there is presence of gunpowder residues on same. It was also found that the trunk contained a large inventory of Army equipment, such as ammo boxes, ammo clips and belts, blanket, knives, and martial arts swords and other devices, end quote.
So,
But I guess he didn't open a gun, right?
Yeah, he always says, "Oh, why I'm a ninja, I'm a martial arts guy. Why would I have a gun?" And clearly, his car trunk had ammo boxes, ammo clips, and belts. This is something that would be hard to understand why you would have in your car if you did not have a gun or access to a gun. And of course, the green jacket that was found is identical to the one that Mr. Kensu wore when he murdered Mr. Macklem.
That witnesses described. Here's another point here. You might be thinking, well, just because he owned ammo and, gun belts doesn't mean, and maybe he had a gun, doesn't mean he's the murderer. Yeah, I agree. But why is he lying about owning guns?
He lies about everything, which is a pretty good tell for guilt.
Yeah. So, again, it's like people treat his word like it's the word of God, and then they harass and malign everybody else involved in the case. But he's lying about basic things. He's lying about basic things here. This is proof of that. Why is he lying about? Why does he lie about having a gun? Where's the gun? They have everything else associated with the gun. Where's the gun?
We're talking about Mr. Kensu and weapons, so let's talk about him and guns. And I'm going to read a little bit from a report which is documenting a conversation the police had with a woman who had a rather serious relationship with Mr. Kensu. This woman is not Crystal, but quote, in talking to her about weapons, she stated that Kensu did not own a shotgun that she knew of, but he always talked about wanting to own one, and that he loves all kinds of weapons, so it is possible that from the time she had seen him that he did acquire a gun or a shotgun. In talking to her, we asked her if he had any guns. She stated that he had a duffel bag that was full of different kinds of guns. Although she did not see them, he did let her feel the bag, and she did feel in the duffel bag what felt like a long gun of some type, and it was heavy and it was thick, end quote. So again, this is more people. It's not just Crystal. It's more people putting a gun in Mr. Kensu's hand.
Or at least putting a strong interest in acquiring that specific type of weapon that killed Scott, in his mind to own. Again, why, if he likes guns and he wanted to own a gun, why not just say that and just say, I didn't kill him? It's not proof. It's not like, oh, that locks it down. But why lie about it? He wants to give everyone this idea that he's this peaceful kind of hippie rock and roll ninja guy or, martial arts dude that's just, and it's not real.
It's not real.
He was really into weapons. He's not honest about that.
A lot of people who have advocated for Mr. Kensu have had to deal with the harsh realization that the person they are advocating for doesn't really exist because the persona he has built up is utter fiction.
It's complete fiction, and it's embarrassing that it's taken us to freaking pierce that veil because it's really, when you just look at his social media, it's actually very much contradicts a lot of what he tries to portray out there in some of these interviews.
I want to talk some more about her Crystal's testimony. She talked about him saying that he was part of a ninja organization and such. And as you mentioned, people mocked her for that.
They still mock her.
I want to read, again, this is a quote I'll be reading from a woman, not Crystal, who had a lengthy relationship with Mr. Kensu of a serious nature. Quote, in talking to blank, she stated Temujin did have a ninja suit and would put it on and be gone for approximately 1 hour or so and then return, and said that he was a member of a secret organization. Also talking to Redacted about a ninja mask or a face mask, she stated she did not recall seeing one of those, but that he did have a dark blue or a black knit cap that would roll up and roll down, and he did have the eyes cut out of it when you pulled it down. Also, she stated that he has a lot of military stuff and different kinds of weapons from ninja and karate arts and survival stuff from the military. She stated he does have Army camouflage pants and the camouflage jacket, plus he has a plain Army green jacket, end quote. So she's describing, first of all, the same type of behavior that Crystal described, the claims of being part of a secret ninja organization. She's describing the more types of weapons he's interested in, and she is also putting him in the clothes that the killer wore.
There you go. I don't know. I think it's really there feels, and I don't know this for a fact, but I get the sense, and it's just my intuition or whatnot or suspicion. But like, it seems sometimes like there's a bit of a Kensu crisis communications firm going on here in social media. Sometimes you see, or in our email, people email us all sorts of angry things about this, and like there's talking points that go out, and then people are repeating that until it's debunked, and then move on to the next thing. Don't address what you got wrong, just move on. And what's interesting to me about that is that one thing we heard recently from some people who again emailed us was, well, I mean, yes, Crystal, her story was backed up by these other women, but they only came forward years and years later. Could it be that they were actually just like trying to get some of that clout that I guess she got by like being, harassed for years and maligned in the mainstream press? Because obviously everyone would want some of that, right? And to be very clear, women who were coming forward in that commutation hearing are coming forward in 1986, immediately after the murders, and talking to police and giving them this information then about some of the abuse, about the weapons stuff, about the ninja stuff. They're one and the same. They're not just coming forward years later. Just because they weren't used in trial didn't mean that they weren't in these police reports.
Yes.
And I think that's really worth saying, because I think implying that some of these women were coming forward in 2011 for their big moment, first of all, people tend to not come forward. Like, that's not easy to do. That's like directly devastating to have to talk about some of this in the first place. But second of all, it's also just factually not true, because they were coming forward and telling authorities what they knew then.
Let's continue with some more excerpts from this one particular woman's conversation with police. And again, if you recall what Crystal talked about in her testimony, this is going to sound very, very familiar. Quote, in talking to blank or redacted, she stated that Kensu was very good at brainwashing people and threatening people to get what he wanted. She stated that he also threatened to kill her and their 3-year-old daughter, redacted, if they ever left him or ever tried to tell anyone anything about him. He would also say that he had friends in high places who could always find anyone he was looking for and do something to them for him. She stated that when she was with Temujin, that he did threaten to kill redacted mother and any of her loved ones if she ever tried to leave him or told anything about him, end quote. This is exactly what Crystal testified to, that she was threatened by Temujin Kensu, that if she ever tried to leave him or tell anybody what he was doing to her, she would pay consequences and her loved ones would pay consequences. It's the exact same thing.
I'm going to say something. This may sound controversial to some. Maybe others agree. I don't know. But in my view, I think things like domestic abuse accusations and rape accusations need to be looked at very seriously. I'm not one of those people who says you need to believe everybody in every situation, because we've seen cases where accusations turn out not to be true and somebody has an agenda that they're trying to fulfill. I think that happens rarely. I don't think that's a common thing, but I do think it happens. And I also think there are other cases where there's just not enough, evidence necessarily to prosecute. Doesn't mean something didn't happen, but it's just our system is set up in a way that it makes it pretty difficult with some of these accusations. This is not one of those cases.
Yeah.
This is people saying, I went through the same exact modus operandi. They're talking to the police about it separately and saying, oh yeah, no, that this is what happened. And I think that's really powerful and significant. And I think hand waving that away should be impossible. Seems like it's not impossible for some people, but it should be impossible, because when you have women who don't know each other, who all dated the same man, if this is a situation where, as another reality, and Temujin Kensu is the model boyfriend for so many different people, and then suddenly someone's coming forward with like, he did all this really wild stuff, I don't think you should dismiss that person. I think you should see if there's evidence for it. because sometimes people might treat one victim differently and other people in a different way. But I could understand people being more skeptical about that, because it's like he has this track record with women where he's a gentleman and he's very nice, and maybe he cheated on one of them, but like he doesn't hurt people, physically or anything like that. And I can understand the skepticism here, but there's not really room for skepticism here, because you see again and again and again women who are with him romantically saying the same exact things in terms of the very specific, violent, and disturbing relationship they had with him. And that he's controlling, and that he's telling them not only is he going to kill them, he's going to kill their families. So I don't understand where the skepticism is coming from here. I really don't. I guess, are they all just lying just to keep a good man down? Because that's what he would want people to believe. But I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either. So another part of, of Crystal's testimony that was particularly explosive is she told an anecdote where Mr. Kensu brandished or wanted to brandish a weapon at Crystal's sister. And this basically put the shotgun, the murder weapon, in Kensu's hand. And Kensu says, I'm not a gun guy. I'm a martial arts guy. And so what I think was particularly shocking about these files is there's someone else who tells a completely different story that also has Temujin Kensu brandishing a weapon in a threatening manner at someone, a gun. And so it is not just Crystal who puts a gun in this murderer's hands. It is another person. And it is an incident where I'm going to read a little bit here. Quote, redacted did state that his car did get away from him. He did strike the fence. He stated an unknown subject came up to him and had a revolver and pointed this revolver at him. And redacted stated at which time he stated to the subject, what are you going to do? Shoot me for hitting a fence. At this time, redacted told the subject that if he wanted to hook, that they could get out and hook. And the subject just stated to him, I'll hook ya. At this time, redacted stated that redacted of redacted came out of the house along with redacted and stated to redacted that he had called the sheriff's department and the subject did take off. And this person was Temujin Kensu.
So wait, what exactly happened there? There's a lot of redactions in there. So can you boil down that incident to like its bare bones?
Somebody hits a fence. Temujin Kensu comes out with a gun and is very angrily, basically threatening the person who hit the fence. Someone says, hey, police are on their way. Temujin leaves.
Okay. So
that particular report, it doesn't identify that person as Temujin, but subsequent reports do identify the man who had the gun and was threatening the driver with it as Temujin. Here's something where Temujin Kensu did apologize for having a gun down at the scene of the accident. Redacted stated at this time that there was something said about that they did not like people running around pointing guns and playing Rambo. So Temujin Kensu, by his own admission, is stating that he was the one who threatened this person who hit a fence. And he threatened him with a gun. And someone says, oh, that's like running around pointing guns and playing Rambo. So
Can I go back a little bit just
Yes.
for a second? Because we're getting on to guns. I want to go on to ninjas for a second. Can I mention that?
sure.
This is from the woman that we were talking about earlier who was talking about the brainwashing and a couple of other things. She talked about how, quote, he wanted her to be his ninja girl, end quote, and that he would have her do all these ninja trainings, ninja acts and exercises. And if, quote, she failed to do them properly, then he would make her get down on the floor and do 20 push-up for punishment for not being able to perform the acts he wanted her to do in the martial arts and ninja. She stated when this, end quote, this was happening when this woman was 4 months pregnant with his child. He's making her do all these stupid exercises and ninja acts and trying to train her to be his ninja girl. And he's having her do this. And the implication is if she's not doing what he wants, he's going to beat her. So I do not want to hear any more ninja jokes from anybody on this. Anyone bemusedly commenting on this is not a cultural clash between the erudite Temujin Kensu who is interested in world culture and the backwards Port Huron jury that doesn't understand that. This is a guy who has been claiming to be a ninja, talking about ninja stuff constantly, has ninja weapons, is abusing people over ninja-related nonsense.
And he is running outside of his house threatening people with a gun.
When they bust up his fence a bit. That's nuts.
It's nuts.
He's a ticking time bomb. That's all you see in these pages. He's a ticking time bomb until he kills a guy because he feels like we can get away with it because he's smarter than everyone else and people have enabled him for forever.
And he's not a smart man. People act like, oh, this guy is smart. But if you ever listen to an interview with him, which I do not recommend, he is not a smart man. And if you read transcripts of different things he said, this is not an intelligent man. Go look at his Facebook page. He is not an intelligent man.
Look at his Twitter.
I don't find him charming at all either. I don't know how he has gotten so many people under his spell so completely. I don't know why so many people choose to believe him over the women he has repeatedly victimized.
People hear the wrongful conviction story first, become immediately convinced based on a short summary that's incredibly misleading that he's innocent. And then they basically work backwards to try to keep feeling that way, even after they see him doing some of the stuff he's doing or saying some of the stuff he's saying. I'm convinced that that's it. And then people who are not as locked into that immediately are like, wait, actually, that does sound pretty bad, and then come off it. But there's a certain type, like where it's a sunk cost fallacy. They've gotten so into it and they can't get out. Maybe they're scared he's going to lash out at them. I don't know. But either way, I mean, he can't hurt you. He's in prison. He can say mean things about you online, but that's significantly minor compared to what the women who've had to deal with him have gone through over the years.
And I want to say that the people who accuse Crystal of lying, they often go to ridiculous and downright offensive extremes that are obscenely offensive. I have seen people say online, including, well, I won't say who, but I've seen people say online that, well, we don't really even know if Crystal was really engaged to Scott. Maybe she's just saying that. The police files speak to this. Quote, in talking to Redacted, he stated that he got to school approximately at 8:10 a.m., and the lot was about half full, did not see anyone in the lot at all, nothing out of the ordinary. In talking to Redacted, he stated that he knew Scott for 7 or 8 years and have been good friends. He stated that Scott was just a great guy, had no enemies in the world, and would help anyone at any time. Also, that the victim was to be getting married this January, end quote. So, further evidence for anybody crazy enough to think you need it, this was a couple that was engaged and were planning a life together.
Again, it's like we've pointed out in our coverage over time so many instances where Temujin is straight up lying. So I guess it's like maybe if the person accusing someone of being a liar is a liar themselves, then that should be taken into account. And maybe people could actually just, I don't know, get the police report and figure it out for themselves that, read it, read every page, read all the reports. And then maybe some of these questions for them will be answered, because I guess I'm just like baffled at how people are making accusations without fully comprehending all the information here. Because it's like, if you're thinking, oh, well, how do we know if he was really engaged? She hasn't come out and said that on a podcast. So I don't know. It's in here. It's pretty clearly in here.
And I don't want to necessarily go into a lot of detail here, but there was so much in here about women he has threatened. I'm just going to read excerpts here and there. Redacted stated that he threatened her to do bodily harm and also threatened to level or blow her house up. In quote, this one I thought was interesting. Quote, at this time and date, this investigator received a phone call from Redacted. Redacted is the mother of Redacted. Redacted stated that she'd received a phone call at about 1:30 a.m. and also at 9:30 a.m. Redacted relayed to her mother that she has been threatened by Temujin Kensu, who told her she better not leave him, and he expects her to provide an alibi for him that he was 700 miles away at the time of the shooting, end quote. So here,
interesting.
Here we have someone reporting that Temujin Kensu was basically threatening them in order to get them to provide an alibi for them. So a lot of stuff there. First of all, why would you be threatening people to provide you with an alibi if you were an innocent person? If Temujin Kensu really did have all of these people far, far away who could report that he was elsewhere at the time of the shooting, why would he need to threaten a person to get one more such alibi? And it is also part of the pattern that we reported on, which I don't believe other people reported on for whatever reason, that Mr. Kensu's alibi witnesses were manipulated by him. It's in the court record. It's in the files that he was manipulating them in order to get them to provide alibis for him. And this is not a theory that Anya and I cooked up. This was mentioned in the court transcript, the trial transcript, and it was even cited by a juror as a reason why they ultimately chose to convict him.
Yeah. But again, like, why I mean, people, I think we've heard from people, well, maybe he was just calling around because he was panicking and he wanted to make sure people remembered. Okay. I don't find that credible. I find it even less credible in the context that he's actually threatening to kill this woman's parents if she doesn't give him a fake alibi for the shooting. That seems consciousness of guilt is the phrase that comes to mind.
Here's another one. Redacted stated that Kensu did control her by threats, violence, and beatings. He did at one time have her write approximately $5,000 in bad checks and made her give him all the money, or he threatened to kill her. Also, talking with Redacted, she stated that she was beaten by Kensu nearly every day and that she was like a prisoner in the house. And it's just, later on, quote, Kensu told her he was a member of a secret organization that did have to fight and take care of people. He Redacted stated he had all kinds of martial arts equipment and uniforms, and that she did see a black ninja mask, or that is what Kensu explained it was to her. So again, all of this stuff fits. And that's the thing about life. This doesn't just apply in courtrooms. When people tell the truth, it fits together.
It fits together. It's not an aberration, Again, I was telling Kevin the other day, we were talking about this. I was like, if I was arrested on cereal charges tomorrow for stealing cereal, and they wanted to say, well, we know she stole Captain Crunch because she's obsessed with pirates, and that somehow relates to the theme of, I don't know, nautical captains. You wouldn't be able to find any information about me being obsessed with pirates. Like, you wouldn't be able to find people saying, yeah, Anya was talking about pirates a concerning amount. You wouldn't be able to find, my pirate vision board, or my, pirate cosplay outfits where I'm going around pretending I'm Annie Bonny or Mary Read. This is a situation where you wouldn't be able to find much. So the claim would be stupid because there wouldn't be evidence to back it up. We have multiple people saying the same thing about his ninja interests over the years. So it's not like it's just Crystal's coming up with this because she watched a ninja movie and got inspired to lie about a man. This is what people are saying about him. And again, to this day, he mocks her about it and acts like, isn't it wild that she said that? Everyone else said it, dude.
Everyone else said it. Maybe if someone ripped off a ninja movie for a fantasy, maybe it was Mr. Kensu.
Yeah, I think it was Mr. Kensu because he's just this mediocre guy, never had a job. His basically job seems to be abusing women. And
let's pull on that thread. Anya says he didn't seem to have a job.
He's a loser.
How on earth did he support himself?
Oh, you don't think it was because he was a really successful rock and roll singer?
Well, one aspect of his relations with women that is really not discussed very often at all is basically he used women to get him money. This is a quote. In talking with Redacted, he stated that Kensu has hurt a lot of people, beat a lot of people up. He stated that when he worked in Flint, that he had a number of young girls working for him and making them bring him between $40 and $50 a day. He did not know how they obtained this money, but if they did not, he would beat them or threaten to kill them. Here's another from another person. When she and Temujin were in the state of Washington and they decided to come back to the state of Michigan, he brought a white female back with him. The reason he brought her back was that he would have Redacted both out working for him by doing waitress work and going door to door collecting for charities and churches, so they could bring all the money back and turn it over to him. If they did not bring the money back or bring enough back, that he stated he would kill them, that he did beat both of them many times. So he is living off of the work of these women that he is manipulating and controlling and threatening.
And beating.
And beating. So when people say, oh, he didn't have any source of income, blah, 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 he did have a source of income. It was the women he exploited.
Yeah, he references, I have always money in the phone call between him and Crystal after Scott's death that police were listening in on. Talks about, I always have money. He always has money because he's extorting it from these women. And it's really, really disturbing to read about. And I guess I'm just like, I don't know. It's really surprising that this hasn't come out yet. This isn't a guy who is a normal guy who holds a job and is abusive, is like, just every girlfriend he's with, he abuses terribly and is an awful person. This is a guy who's like, abuse is part of his business. It's part of his
business plan.
It's how he survives. He gets a woman, preferably young, preferably extremely young. Think teenagers, think young teenagers. He gets them. He, love bombs them. He brainwashes them to the point where they think they need to stick with him, cut off other people in their life. And he, forces them to continue to comply even when they don't want to do things by beating them and threatening to kill other people and threatening to kill them. And he makes money off of them. I mean, this says waitressing, but whatever they can do to get that money or these phony charities and whatnot, they will do that to ensure that they will continue to survive. Like, this is what he does. He's a parasite. I don't think I've ever read about somebody whose life was made better by Temujin Kensu encountering them.
No.
He's like a human virus who goes from person to person and essentially makes them sick. Mostly women, but also the men around those women, they tend to come to harm because he's in their lives.
And they are victims. I'm going to digress a moment here. We've talked about when Mr. Kensu was incarcerated, he actually married a woman named Denise. And from what I understand, she should be counted as one of his victims.
100%.
And from what I understand about that relationship and some of the details of it, she was manipulated and used. And so this is an open invitation. If there are people out there listening who would like to share with us Denise's story from their own perspective, reach out. We can keep it confidential if you wish.
That actually goes for any of these stories. With Denise, it's kind of troubling because, she was his advocate for many years, but it seems like her life, she was taken advantage of much in the same, like, it's not that just happened to her. It happened to these women before her. He exploits women for their time, their money, their energy, their youth, for sex, for everything. And just because she was helping him does not make her not a victim.
Yes.
She was victimized, and my heart goes out to her.
And those close to Mr. Kensu like to act like his relationship with Denise was like a classic great love story, but they don't tell you details like, for instance, at one point, Denise filed for divorce.
She tried to get away from him. And, and this was the grip he had over her, even though he was imprisoned at the time, but she tried to get away from him. It's very sad. If anyone has any connection with Temujin, just so you know, like, or any of these women or whatnot, and you want to talk about it, we will keep you safe. We are not just gonna like take your story and use it willy-nilly. If you want to just talk off the record, that's fine. We're not here to exploit whatever you went through, but we do want to hear about it because we think it's really important that we learn as much as possible about this person and all the people he hurt. And can I just like kind of get ahead of one thing or try to like ask you about one thing before we go on? Obviously, it's difficult here because there's so many redactions, which is good because I want these people's privacy to be maintained as much as possible. But at the same time, it makes it harder to tell, are all of these coming from like the same one person or same two people?
No, there's different people.
We have a very good sense of who a lot of these people are, even though they're redacted, just because we've done the reporting. So I want to emphasize, we're talking about like a lot of, like, there's different people with different stories that are all backing each other up. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
This isn't like one ex-wife that's like, yeah, I'm going to get revenge. And we're like just selectively quoting one person over and over again or two people over and over again. There's like a number of different people coming in here and saying this.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's move on. There's another incident here. This is between, pardon me, Mr. Kensu and a man. In this instance, someone asked this gentleman to get car keys back from Mr. Kensu.
Oh, car keys again.
And quote, at that point, Kensu blew up and started yelling at him about being expected to walk, etc. He started calling redacted a gay slur and began to make threats of physical harm to him. Redacted said that he did not do anything to provoke that kind of conduct on Kensu's part. Here's another one. Quote, Redacted refused to give his home address and phone number. He is the ex-boyfriend of Kensu's ex-wife. In talking to Redacted, Kensu did attack him, and there was a present court case pending on him in Oakland County. In talking to him, he stated that just 2 months ago when they were in the courtroom, Kensu did make a lunge at him and told him that he was dead. Also, in talking with Redacted, he stated that Kensu has hurt a lot of people, beat a lot of people up. He stated that when he worked in Flint that he had a number. I guess we already read that part.
I have a question. That incident that you just read about the Pleasant Ridge situation and the Oakland County and the assault, that against a man, that was actually referenced in the commutation hearing, I believe.
Yes, this was a man who was romantically involved, I believe, with Mr. Kensu's estranged wife, and he basically attacked him.
So we referred to that incident in that commutation hearing. But again, this is a situation where that man, when talking to police, immediately revealed all this back when the original investigation was going on.
This did not just come up for the first time in 2010.
This is not a situation where the prosecution was based just like on, Crystal and what she has to say. And then, oh, wow, we'll learn all this stuff later. Let's put it out there. No, I mean, this was all a portrait of Temujin was becoming very clear very early on.
And here's something that wasn't in the commutation. There was yet another person, a man who faced threats because he was dating someone that Mr. Kensu thought of as his own property. This is Crystal had dated another person.
Do you want me to read this?
Sure.
So, starting with she further?
Yes.
Quote, she further informed this officer that her sister dated a subject by the name of Redacted. Believe this is the first name of the subject. She states that this redacted subject had been beat up by this redacted at one time because he had dated redacted's sister. She stated to the officer this redacted subject works on a boat, believed to be a lake freighter, and that he lives with his father, a redacted on redacted. She states that this subject has had other contacts with the subject and may be able to provide additional information.
So there's a pattern here of Mr. Kensu threatening people who are involved with women he thinks are his, and particularly women who are involved with Crystal. And actually,
men who are involved with
who are involved with Crystal. And they actually were able to track this person down. Anya, it's on page 18 of our notes. Do you want to read their conversation with him?
Sure. So starting with the interview and then appeared. Redacted appeared at this office at the above time and date. Redacted stated that he first met Redacted at a wedding reception that they both attended in the year of 1985. The next encounter was in April of 1986 when Scott Macklem had introduced Redacted to Redacted, and Scott indicated that Scott and Redacted had broken up in their relationship at that point in time. End quote. So that's referring to one of the Redacteds there is Crystal.
Yeah.
Because Crystal and Scott were together in high school and then broke up, but they remained friends afterwards. Quote, Redacted stated he then dated Redacted a few times, but the relationship was more or less casual and nothing heavy. Redacted stated that after the first week in May, 86, he had to go back to Mississippi where he is employed on a ship that plies the river. At that time, he indicated to Redacted that he realized that she was a young girl and he could not expect her to not go out with others while he was away. End quote. Can I just say, wow, what a it's nice when you're reading about a guy like Kensu, who's just the most chauvinist pig you could you look up the phrase chauvinist pig in the dictionary and his face is there. Some mature young people and some mature young men dating each other, dating girls in this time. It's just refreshing to read about. You know what I mean? Wow, this guy broke up with Crystal in a very responsible and normal way. Isn't that nice? Yeah. I just wanted to single that out because it's just shocking after you're reading about this other guy who basically acts like women are chattel for him. Okay, so quote, Redacted stated that his job did give him time off every month so he could come back to visit. He stated that he came back that June and got in touch with Redacted and invited her out to lunch. During lunch, Redacted explained to Redacted that she didn't want to continue dating Redacted, but wouldn't elaborate just why. However, in Redacted's mind, he felt Redacted disposition had changed 180 degrees from when he had last been with her. She appeared uptight about something. 3 days after that, Redacted was at the Taco Bell in Northgate, and upon walking out in the parking lot, he was met by 3 male subjects. One of the subjects yelled to him, "Hey, Redacted, do you know that a friend of ours is fucking your girl's brains out?" At that, Redacted stated that he hit the subject in anger, but then ran to his car as the subjects appeared in good physical specimens. He expected them to follow, however, they just laughed. After that incident, Redacted had an occasion to go to Redacted's home, at which time he told Redacted about the encounter at the Taco Bell. Redacted, upon hearing that, pulled up to a crouch on the sofa and pulled a throw cover up to her chin, and was extremely upset. Redacted then talked to Redacted's mother about this, and the mother told her that Redacted evidently was having problems with a Temujin Kensu, but Redacted was very reluctant to elaborate with her on the situation. Redacted stated that he had never knowingly met this Kensu and had never seen the subjects that were in the Taco Bell lot before. Redacted stated that he had returned to Mississippi the 1st of November and was notified by his father about Scott's demise. I asked Redacted if he may have had an occasion to attend a Halloween party that was put on in Croswell, and Redacted stated that he wasn't there and wasn't into those kinds of parties much. Redacted added that he is striking for an engineer's job on the boat, and one time had attended a military academy and was considered a candidate for West Point. This interview was conducted by Detectives Hudson and Sergeant Bounds, end quote.
So definitely a pattern of him threatening and perhaps even trying to humiliate other men who are connected to a woman.
So I do want to point out here that Crystal's sister initially came forward with this story that, oh, this guy got beat up. Instead, there was a physical confrontation where, they're saying these horrible things about Crystal in this Taco Bell parking lot, and he kind of lashes out at them, not involving Kensu directly. So this is an instance where you can say, well, this sounds worse at first, and then you go, and it's more complicated than that.
But there is a definite pattern there of him threatening and being aggressive towards these other men. But as you point out, it does raise the question of why did this offensive behavior, why did it escalate so much when it came to Scott Macklem? And I think an answer to that is included, or at least hinted at in the very end of what you just read, which is this Halloween party. Because there was this Halloween party less than a week before the murder of Scott Macklem, where Mr. Kensu was in attendance, and the subject was brought up at this Halloween party that not only was Crystal engaged to Scott Macklem, but that Crystal was pregnant with Scott Macklem's baby. And in his own testimony at the commutation hearing, Mr. Kensu went so far as to say that at the time of the murder, he believed that there was a chance that the baby that Crystal was pregnant with was his baby. And it's not. Absolutely no way it could be Mr. Kensu's baby. But I tend to believe that that is why it escalated, because Mr. Kensu, as we will hear in future episodes, has a very, very, very high opinion, not only of himself, but of his progeny. And so
he doesn't treat them very well, but he like a classic, the classic narcissist parent, right? Is my children are extensions of me, like they belong to me. They're my possessions. So it's not even about treating them well or regarding them well. It's more of just this, kind of like I consider them my property too. You're not going to have my woman and my baby.
So I think that's what caused it to escalate. What do you think?
I completely agree. I also think there's some really weird stuff that we'll probably uncover eventually. I'm not even going to get into it now, but there's some weird stuff with him.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff with kids with him that I think...
That's what I was alluding to clumsily, and that's episodes to come.
It's going to get pretty crazy, but I think in this situation, let's just say that there's a possessiveness there that, maybe even more so than just your standard kind of narcissistic parent situation.
So after the murder, Kensu presented alibi witnesses. And as I alluded to earlier, we reported in our earlier episodes how he obtained those alibi witnesses, which was by calling them and trying to manipulate them and confuse them by saying, oh, didn't you see me on this day? Or, and just trying to, basically what he did was witness tampering. And this was described so completely in the transcripts that, as I mentioned before, it was cited by the jurors as a reason not only not to believe those particular alibi witnesses, but as a reason to convict Mr. Kensu. And these attempts by him to manipulate these witnesses, they began very, very early on. The police got a call that shortly after the arrest, they got a call from somebody who said, quote, Kensu called him approximately 1 or 2 days after he was in jail, trying to get him as an alibi witness and telling him he was at his house on the date of the offense, which would have been on the 5th. In talking to Redacted, he stated that was not so, and the suspect would have been there on approximately 11/2/86 or 11/3/86, end quote. So just days after his arrest, he's starting to call people. We mentioned earlier about the occasion where he threatened or tried to intimidate a woman into giving him an alibi. Another detective was present at the time of the arrest. Well, let me just read this quote. It should be noted that while the suspect was under arrest and after being processed to the Port Huron Police Department, the suspect was allowed to make several telephone calls from the undersigned detective's office. The undersigned detective was present when the suspect did use his credit card to make these calls. The first call had apparently been placed to a karate studio somewhere in the Escanaba area. The undersigned detective was present while this telephone call was being made, and it was the undersigned detective's opinion that Mr. Kensu was apparently trying to convince someone at the other end of the telephone call that he was in Escanaba on 11/5/86 at approximately 12 p.m.
Oops. Well, that's not suspicious, right? That's just what normal people. Also, in between, that's what, people. We've gotten emails from people. They're just like hand wave away anything. And for me, this is. It's not that it's not like, okay, I'm pretty sure I was hanging out with Kevin that day. Let me call him. That's bad because I'm tainting Kevin as a witness. And then it could be, it could be looked at later as suspicious. But this is not that. This is if I'm calling everybody I know or anyone I had a visit with in remotely the same time frame as this situation, and casting my net wide, and I'm calling in favors. I'm calling people who I saw. I'm calling, people and threatening them that I'm going to kill them and their families if they don't give me. That's not normal. Let's not pretend like that's normal. And think about, for the people who are kind of still oh, well, I don't know. I might have done that. No, you wouldn't have.
You wouldn't have.
You wouldn't have been threatening people and calling everybody. If you think you were somewhere, you'd probably maybe be most interested in that. And then the best situation is you give that information to your defense attorney or to police, and then they handle it. You don't need to do anything, but you certainly wouldn't be doing that much.
Then there's a couple other things. I'm just going to give you, this is an odd detail. May not mean anything at all. I'm going to read this quote. At this time and date, the subject appeared at this office. And also, the suspect is just a random citizen. Quote, at this time and date, the below-named suspect appeared at this... Subject.
It's a subject.
At this time and date, the below-named subject appeared at this office and turned over the described evidence, stating that he had found this at approximately 6:45 p.m. or on 11/5/86 in the parking lot just east from the crime scene and towards the Fine Arts building, end quote. And what he found was an empty shotgun shell carton with the label Federal High Power 20 gauge. So this was an empty box of ammunition that was found not in the parking lot where the murder occurred, but another parking lot, it sounds like. So it's unclear if this had any connection whatsoever to the murder. It was hunting season. There was, I believe, a fingerprint on the box, but it was not Mr. Kensu's. And as We don't know whose it is. So
it's unidentified.
So it's an interesting detail.
I think people make too much of this.
I do too. And then the other thing is Mr. Kensu always says, oh, the police never talked to me. In these files, there is a transcript of a 20-minute conversation they had with him right after he was arrested. And then there was also some pretty detailed notes on another conversation they had when he initiated an interview with them a few months later.
Are you telling me that Temujin Kensu is lying about something?
Yeah, he suggested that there's no police interviews, and
why?
there were.
Why would he lie? Like what? They didn't even look into it that hard because they didn't talk to me. I would have said everything straight.
And basically, he gives the story he's told since. So it's including he's already quote he claims that. Quote, he stated this stuff about Crystal saying he was part of some Yakuza organization was a figment of her imagination, and she's seen this in a video movie about ninja with the actor Robert Mitchum, end quote. Kensu stated that Crystal had a wacky imagination, end quote. But again, this is something that he said for years. This is something that his supporters repeat, but this is something that's not borne out by the facts because he told this exact same story to a variety of other men and women. So I don't find these interviews particularly interesting. But as I say, we'll probably end up putting all this stuff in our group at some point.
I will say one thing that, we don't need to read it because it's kind of confusingly written, but there were sort of contemporaneous notes on the phone call that Crystal and Temujin did together. And what struck me with that was he just kept on basically saying, he basically used like the 1980s version of therapy speak on her, where he was going between trying to get from her information on how the investigation was going, while also being like, oh, you're so crazy. Oh, you're nuts. Like, here's how mentally ill you are. Just trying to, it's basically classic gaslighting. It was very interesting. I don't know. It just kind of tells you something about him, I think. But that was, I guess I'm just like, again, if he was a guy who's just a normal person where there was no indication he was interested in ninjas and stuff, I could understand some of this hue and cry, but there is, and people just sound completely uninformed when they go on about this because it's like a lot of people were saying the same exact thing. I guess they're all lying, right? All the women in his life lie about him because they're awful, right? I mean, or he's a guy who fundamentally hates women. He's resentful against women. He's misogynistic against women. And I guess I'm just like, with all this lying, with all the lying he's done over the years, it's like, I think he just thinks other people are stupid and they're not going to look into it. I mean, I really think he has a fundamental contempt for other people. And he's certainly willing to use people to his advantage. But, I think I think he just sees other people as marks.
Yeah, as we say, people who have only been given half of the story, who have come to the wrong conclusions, frankly, don't feel bad about it. It's now you have the whole story. And I think that's about all I wanted to cover from these files we got from the police. I think it's likely we'll be doing a couple of other episodes relatively soon that I think will be of interest in this case.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I think you had some things you wanted to remark.
Before I do, I just want to ask you, what was like the most significant moment in reading these files? Like what stood out for you? I have something that stood out for me, so I'm just curious if you had something.
There's been so much, frankly, disingenuous arguments from people saying, oh, we don't even know if Scott knew he was being allegedly threatened by Temujin Kensu. We don't even know. Maybe it was somebody else entirely different. Maybe it was some mysterious other ex-boyfriend of Crystal's. So the detail that there were cars behaving suspiciously outside the Macklem home, and that he went and he spotted those cars outside where Mr. Kensu was living, I thought that was telling.
Yep.
And I think it really lays bare the weakness of that particular line of thought.
That is absolutely the moment for me too.
And again, shame on people who want to drag Mr. Macklem's name through the mud. Just shame on them. It's time to let that go.
I agree. it's like, like, it's like, I don't know. It's like, it's great that you feel like the need to, like, impress a murderer, get him free or whatever. But like, I guess I'm just like, you can talk about strengths or weaknesses with the case without doing that. It's been years, I don't know.
So what moment stood out for you?
That one. I mean, the fact that this murder victim was basically, gathering evidence in his future murder is really chilling and disturbing. And the fact that this guy was going through some of this fear and anxiety and problems before his death when he should have been excited about getting married and having a baby, it just makes me really sad. And I think Kensu should rot for what he did to all of these people. I really think he should rot for what he did to Scott. And I think hearing people kind of repeat these like weird, weak arguments is just, I don't know, it's disillusioning because it's the same exact stuff we saw in Delphi. I'm sorry.
It's the same
I'm
stuff.
going to just say it. It's the same. There's no daylight. Okay, there's very little daylight. And I'm not talking about people who are like, it's not enough evidence for me. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who are just like, repeating the same talking points. All, it's like, yeah, we see there's a group chat going on, like when you're just going out there and putting out the Kensu crisis communications, like talking points that have been like hastily fashioned and are often inaccurate. And then if anyone else tells you, no, that's not right, instead of addressing that and thinking, wow, I had a lot of information wrong. Maybe I should, like, I don't know, change my opinion because it was built on a pack of lies. It's like, no. Like, let's just move the goalposts. Like, constantly, you're just seeing the goalposts disappear over the horizon. And then you walk up to them and you're like, all right, but this is still wrong. Oh, there they go again. It's like, it's exactly what you see in Delphi. It's exactly what you saw with people defending Kohberger. It's this kind of, it's another genre, another flavor of this true crime nonsense where it's like, instead of, you're basically making an assumption that someone has to be innocent and then just filtering everything through that filter instead of actually looking at things as they are.
And again, we live in the real world. We don't live in the world of make-believe. Let's not talk about evidence that you like to imagine might exist if the police just did something differently. Let's look at the evidence which does exist, which has been uncovered over the years by police and by Mr. Kensu's investigators. Let's look at that. And let's stop the stupid speculations.
Absolutely. So now I had a couple of things that we've seen even in recent times, a couple of other things come out about this case that I thought were, well, I'm not going to say anything right now, but but we saw some other things come out. And I actually took the time to compile a list of suggestions in terms of how this case could be covered more responsibly going forward. And to be clear, Kevin and I, as you can tell from listening to the episodes, we strongly believe in Kensu's guilt in the murder of Scott Macklem. But that's our opinion. You don't have to agree. And that's okay. Like, there could be two intellectually honest positions to take in this case, and I think there are. But when I look at some of this stuff, it's not intellectually honest and it's actually actively harmful. So I have a couple of categories. The first one is things that I think need to be addressed in projects going forward. If someone's doing a deep dive into this case or doing a coverage of this case, I believe strongly that all or most of these topics should at least come into it. And so I'm going to read those. 1, you need to address the multiple women who have come forward with stories of rape, coercion, domestic abuse, financial abuse, all sorts of awful things against themselves and others by Temujin Kensu. That needs to be addressed. That needs to come up. We cannot keep whitewashing this as a true crime community. 2, you need to mention the fact that Kensu called around multiple witnesses, including the witness who then called around his friends in an attempt to solidify Kensu's alibi, thus tainting the alibi. This needs to be mentioned in conjunction with the fact he was also threatening at least one person to provide him an alibi, or he would kill her, or rather kill her family. That needs to come into this. We cannot just keep on saying, oh, well, there were all these alibi witnesses without mentioning the tainting, because that influenced the jury's decision. And if you're not mentioning that, you're not explaining to your audience what happened. 3, the fact that numerous courts and legal officials and the jury have all found him guilty or upheld his conviction over the years. People often like to cite like one judge who I believe reversed the conviction before being overruled by the rest of the court. People like to mention dicta. Let's mention the majority opinions, perhaps. That might be good. That might be actually a little more relevant. 4, we need to mention Kensu's contention that there's a vast conspiracy against him, including but not limited to his own original defense attorney, David Dean. Yes, you heard that right. 5, we need to include that Kensu's other accusers came forward immediately to police. These are not women who just were sitting around and then in 2011 were like, oh, yeah, maybe I'll get involved. We're seeing their insights and their experiences in this original police report. They're there. It's not new. It wasn't used in trial because I imagine it was overly prejudicial and did not have a direct bearing on what happened to Scott. That's why only Crystal's came in, because hers had direct bearing on what happened to Scott. But it doesn't mean that they were just sitting around and were like, yes, I think I'll get some of that cloud, aka basically being reached out to random shoddy creators for the rest of my life who want to exploit my pain and exonerate the guy who abused me. What a wonderful thing to have happen to you, right? So 6, we need to mention that Kensu told multiple lies, including acting like he wanted to testify on his own behalf, which was clearly untrue given that he said to the press immediately after the trial that he did not want to testify, and that was his idea. What number am I on? I guess 7. We need to mention that Crystal clearly described Kensu owning a shotgun that has since vanished. We need to mention the ammo in his car. We need to mention all of that. Okay, we need to mention his stated interest in guns. We need to mention the fact he was telling other people he had guns and was having his romantic partners feel bags of guns and telling them that he had guns. We need to debunk this thing that he hated guns or was just using his fists of fury in order to do things. He was absolutely someone who was interested in owning weapons, said he wanted to, said he did, and that was glimpsed by Crystal. So she does not say he owned a shotgun. She describes a shotgun in the testimony. People who read the testimony will understand that. Now I'm going to list some talking points that I think need to die. 1, the idea that Scott Macklem was being threatened by a person who is not Temujin Kensu. There's no evidence for that. Nobody is saying that. 2, friends of Scott Macklem saying he was threatened before he met Temujin Kensu. The incident they cite for this is the friend is clearly getting the wrong date because the guy actually says Temujin Kensu's name at the time. So he's not like bringing up some random person that we don't know. He's saying, oh, it was Temujin Kensu and it was in December. Couldn't have been in December, so we got the date wrong. It's not hard. 3, we need to drop this kind of, Scott Macklem's victimology. He was into drugs. People have been trying to dredge up stuff on him for decades. They failed. If you have something concrete, let's hear it. If not, enough. 4, we need to drop the idea that police needed to waste a bunch of time and resources going down blind alleys just because, I guess, people today don't want it to be Temujin. You're given the case you're given. You have to look at who's coming up, and having a lead in a guy who was saying that he wanted to kill this guy and then immediately being like, but let's look at all the drug dealers when no one's saying he's involved in drugs. That's not good police work, okay? That's not being thorough. That's like just, I don't know what that is. That's it's just stupid. 5, we need to stop saying scores of witnesses placed him far, far away. Only 2 matter as far as the time frame goes. That's the thing that I think gets people hooked on this case. They're like, 18 people said that he was in like the Upper Peninsula. Like, whoa, like how could it help? He's in a plane? Whoa. Like that's what gets them. Only 2 matter. Only 2 matter. So 18 is just trying to pad it out to make it sound more impressive. 6, we need to drop the hints that scores of judges, prosecutors, politicians, defense attorneys, witnesses, police, and more are conspiring against Temujin Kensu. 7, we need to stop putting forward the idea that he's just a cool rock and roll dude who's into karate and having a good time, because that's not true, and that's very clear if you actually look at the case. So stop saying it, because it's really offensive and horrible. Stop whitewashing this guy. We're as true crime people, as journalists, we're not his flack. We're not his PR person. We're not his stressed, aggrieved publicist who's running around on the phone trying to book him gigs. Okay, we're supposed to be telling the truth. He's not a cool rock and roll karate dude from the 80s. He's not fun. He's not nice. He's horrible. You can still think he's innocent, but he's horrible.
He's also not very smart.
And I am so sick of people whitewashing a rapist. I'm so sick of people whitewashing a convicted murderer. You don't need to do that. You can go based on the evidence and come to a different conclusion about us, but you don't get to throw away all of the discussion of abuse, all the discussion of rape, all this other stuff.
That brings up another thing. I wonder how you would respond to this. I've seen the talking point that it's not fair to call Temujin Kensu a rapist just because many women say that he raped them has.
I'm literally going to explode if I hear that again. We're going to get that in my what I'd like to see section, which is coming up.
Okay,
but let's just say, like, I'm trying to keep it together. Yeah. Let's stop whitewashing. It would be a nightmare to be this guy's publicist or flack. We don't need to take on that job for ourselves. And it's wrong to do this. It's really sick, actually. So I think I'm like on like 8. I don't know. I can't count. I put these in bullet format instead of like numbered formats. That was a stupid idea. So anyway, yeah, we're talking about how he's not smart. I can't even count. So there we go. 8, we need to drop the idea that it was unfair to bring in Kensu's treatment of Crystal into trial. It had a direct bearing on what happened to Scott. It's been also, you don't have to take our word for it. You don't have to take, well, the murder sheet likes it, so it's good. No, it's been adjudicated in court. Repeatedly. Judges in Michigan are cool with it. So I think we all should be cool with it. It had a direct bearing on what happened to Scott. The motivation was the possessiveness of Crystal. And having a normal boyfriend who then just turns around and shoots your fiance, that doesn't really make any sense. So you need to get in what happened to Crystal. You need to get into their relationship. You need to get into his treatment. And to be clear, I don't think it would have been fair to bring in other victims of Temujin's behavior into trial, because that wouldn't have directly connected to Scott, and it would have been too prejudicial. So I think prosecutor Robert Cleland in this situation used discretion and did the correct thing. And again, it's been held up in court. So when people are acting like this is some horrible aberration, well, appeals people had the chance and they didn't get it through. So I don't know what to tell you. I guess we're all just smarter than the Michigan judges here, right? Now, I think 9, we need to drop the insinuation that Crystal is the true killer of Scott. This is so wrong and so offensive. You're going to a woman who lost the father of her child. She lost, her love. She lost her fiance, the guy she wanted to marry. He was brutally killed by a guy that she just happened to have the misfortune of going on a date with, who became obsessed with her and spent months beating her, psychologically tormenting her, threatening her. So, let's not put her through that too. Anybody who does this at this point, I will kick into the sun. I guess I will just say that. I'm like, I can deal with a lot of things and people coming up with some stupid stuff, but if people are doing that at this point, when all this information has come up, you just, that's crossing a line, I think. I think that's horrible. And I think that is not necessary. What do you think?
I agree.
Here's things I like to see. So you mentioned one of them. In the discussion of Crystal being raped and abused by Temujin Kensu, I see the following. I see things like, well, why didn't she report the rape immediately? I see things like, why didn't she leave him? Just dump him. I'm trying to be really careful about what I say right now. Anyone who's done... And to be clear, I'm not an expert in domestic violence. I'm not an expert in rape. I'm a journalist who covers this because I cover true crime. In the reading I've done and just the reporting I've done, it's very clear to me that in instances of rape and in sexual abuse and domestic abuse, victims, survivors, do not always immediately disclose what they've been through. That's extremely common. And adding to that the fact that Kensu was threatening Crystal, and that he threatened other women and that other people didn't disclose immediately, I think that falls into that classic pattern. So, same with domestic abuse. People don't leave immediately. People take a long time to leave, or they never leave and they get killed. So, we don't get to unlearn everything we know about rape and domestic abuse and domestic violence just because it's bad for our narrative in a specific case. You know, you don't get to say in most situations, well, yeah, I believe the victim. And yeah, of course she wouldn't disclose immediately because she was scared and because she wanted it just to go away or blah, blah, blah. Oh, but in this situation, I think it's suspicious because, like, you know, that's good for my guy then. We don't get to do that. That's extremely offensive to anyone who's survived any situation like that. And what you're telling your audience is if any of them have gone through that, you wouldn't have believed them unless they had done it in the perfect way possible.
And if you have a long list of women saying, this man assaulted me, this man beat me, this man raped me, that man's a rapist. And you don't need a judicial decision to back that up. Another stupid talking point I've heard is, well, if the state really and truly believed the women, if they really believed he was a rapist, then why didn't they ever charge him with rape? And the reason for that is because the man is serving a life sentence without parole for murder. So why put all of these women through the ordeal of a trial when you're not going to make his punishment one iota worse? And also the fact of the matter is, because of the nature of the crime of rape
and domestic violence
it can be hard to prove because it's a crime that happens often between just two people and they're telling contradicting stories, and it can be hard to get to the truth in court.
This is 1986 we're talking about.
Yeah, so he is accused of rape by a variety of women who tell consistent, believable stories. You don't need to charge him with those offenses because he's already serving a life sentence. I always try to be very careful. I don't want to put too much on a person's plate or put my thumb on the scale, and I want to be fair to everybody. But I feel very comfortable saying this man is a rapist and a vile one at that.
I don't believe in the kind of dictum of like you have to believe everyone about everything. I don't. I want to see some consistency, and I want to see, does this hang together? And also, I can believe someone and not necessarily feel like it's prosecutable, right? There's a difference. Yeah. Like there's what's going to hold together in court, and then there's what I believe and what you can prove and whatnot. In this case, I strongly believe these women. I strongly believe Crystal. I believe everything, what they're saying about him. And I am disgusted that people would essentially be using like talking points that would be shameful for like a 1980s, like old school cop who's like, yeah, why didn't they report it right away? You know, we've all seen true crime stories that have that guy in it, right? Like the old school detective who dismisses the rape allegations because like, yeah, well, did you scream? What were you wearing? You know, that kind of stuff. And we all want to scream when we're listening to those podcasts. It's like, oh my gosh, if you had just done the right thing, you might have actually prevented a bunch of murders, right? And why we're adopting that kind of like bizarre thinking that we know is not backed up by like psychology or anything else, why we're adopting that just for this guy, I do not understand.
Yeah, it's being done in the service of a man who deserves no charity, and it's being done in a way that causes unnecessary harm and pain to a lot of women who don't deserve it.
It's like, what are we going to ask them next? Did you give them the wrong idea? How short was your skirt? Like, I mean, like it's disgusting to me. It's and no one, and people don't do it in these other cases. And it's like, what the hell? Like, it is so ass backwards. And if I see it, I will say something. I don't care who's doing it. I will say something. This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable for you be putting that garbage out to your audience. And if I see it, I will say something because I feel very passionately about this. Like, it's not okay. And it also, it makes true crime, it cheapens and coarsens it, where we're essentially using our understanding of things like rape and domestic violence as a like something we can turn on and off depending on what we want from the outcome of a case. It's not acceptable. Victims do not always disclose, especially when they're being threatened, especially when there's violence. It's 1986.
And if you want to believe he is not a rapist or not a person who perpetrates domestic violence, then you have to believe that all of these women who many of whom never met each other, had no connection with each other, that they somehow simultaneously came up with the exact same lie. And I don't believe that. I believe these women, and I believe Temujin Kensu is a monster.
I'm going to tell you a story that has to do with Burger Chef for a second, and it loops back. There was a situation that happened with a suspect in the Burger Chef murders, Donald Forrester, horrible rapist, horrible man. You know, one of those guys where you're like, man, you would have been a serial killer if you'd gotten the chance. Or maybe there are some bodies that we don't know about. This guy abducts a woman. He doesn't know her. He abducts her with his cousin. They rape her. She jumps out of the car. I'm convinced that saved her life. I'm convinced that she saved her life and other lives by escaping that night. I think they were going to kill her. I'm actually like fairly confident about that. She escapes. She runs. She manages to get to a house. They don't let her in, but they call the police. She's naked. She's got burns on her legs from jumping out of a moving car to escape these men. And police come up. It's in Anderson, Indiana. Anderson police come, and they're suspicious of her. They think like, well, I don't know, like that sounds kind of crazy. They don't believe her. They treat her like she may have done something wrong, or like, well, I don't know, what are you really doing? And this is, again, she's naked. She's been abducted by people she doesn't know. This is not a dispute. This is not a domestic dispute. But they kind of treat it like it is, and like, oh, we're pretty suspicious of you, actually. And thank goodness, Indiana State Police Detective Tom Davidson, he's since passed away. He gets the case. They call him, he gets called in, and he is able to crack it open. He believes her immediately. When we talked to him, he was like crying, remembering some of this stuff because he empathized with this person, with this survivor, and because it still affected him years and years later. And the reason I bring that up is because, when you look at these old cases involving rapes, involving things like this, you have people who are more in the mode of the Anderson police, were in that situation, and you have people who are like Tom Davidson. And I feel like the investigators in this Port Huron, these guys who were involved, they were more like Tom Davidson. They took this seriously. And that is to their credit. So when I see people beating up on this investigation or they did a lousy job, reading this file, I feel like they took these claims seriously and they looked at them. And that you cannot say that for every police department, especially back then, that they wouldn't just dismiss it as being kind of out there, or like, I don't know, maybe there's a misunderstanding between two people sort of thing. So I want to say that. I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent there. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to say that. Let's talk about other things I'd like to see more of. I would like to see condemnation from creators of varying opinions of Kensu and Paula's horrible treatment of both Crystal and her family members and others in this case, including recent doxings and posts with her phone number and posts with her full name. Okay? It's not just Crystal that gets this abuse. Anyone. This should be condemned. And if you're going to have Paula Kensu, Kensu's biggest cheerleader on your program and just do a giggly, chat fest, gab fest interview with her about what a wonderful advocate she is. If this isn't your first question of why are you doing this, as far as why are you tormenting your husband's rape victim, then that's not a good use of anyone's time, and you're not using your platform in a way that I find appropriate or good. And you're basically just telling anyone who's been through this that, you don't care and that you would probably side with their attacker over them. So that's one thing. If that's not condemned, then I am very suspicious of whatever is going on there. And then lastly, we do not all need to agree on guilt or innocence, but people do not get to throw out everything they know about rape, domestic violence, etc., just because it hurts their preferred narrative. And I think if a work doesn't do most of these things that I've just listed out in these various categories, it's not worth your time. And it's by a person who decided to either act as a flack for a serial rapist who murdered a 20-year-old father-to-be because he's an angry maniac, or it's because they're ignorant and they didn't do any of the necessary work needed to understand this case, and they did not look past these superficial traditional media headlines on it. And then in that case, they're not necessarily morally horrible, but they're lazy and they didn't do a good job. So you shouldn't listen anyway. So that is my take. I mean, we need to demand people do better in true crime, and this is where we start. Like, you can people have been telling a story that's not true, and it needs to stop, because at this point, I can understand why it happened in the past. I can understand it, but now is a new day, and now there's more information out there. And if you're not at least grappling with some of these really important issues, you're not doing your job. It's a privilege to have a platform. It's a privilege to be able to speak to you guys about crime. But that privilege comes with some serious responsibilities. Okay? And if you're just whitewashing things and trying to fit things into a really easy narrative, that's not okay. Not at the expense of rape victims and domestic abuse victims. And we have a lot more to say on that. We have a lot more information that is coming together that we will be coming out with that I think will really continue to shake the foundations of this case. So this isn't over. This will be continuing. We will continue to report on it, but it's the more I learn, the more appalled I am. I guess I'll just say that.
I'll say that too. One more thing before we close. I mentioned we'd be interested in hearing from people who knew Denise, who married Mr. Kensu when Mr. Kensu was incarcerated. I think all the talk about, Scott's victimology, it's born out of silliness, but it does have an underlying good point to it.
I agree.
Which is that for all of these years, all of these decades, we have been talking endlessly about this stupid man, Temujin Kensu, who is a violent thug, and in and of himself, he's not a particularly interesting or worthwhile man. Certainly doesn't deserve really our attention. The person who really does deserve our attention is the victim in this case, Mr. Scott Macklem. So if anyone within the sound of my voice knew Mr. Macklem, cared about Mr. Macklem, loved Mr. Macklem, please reach out to us at murdersheet@gmail.com. We'd love to talk because we'd really love for people to get to know the real Scott Macklem.
And I'm going to say this, we will protect you. You do not have to have your voice on the show. We do not want to put you in a position where Paula Kensu is going to freak out and spam your work with a billion emails. We will protect you. We understand the ramifications of talking and speaking out in this case, that you will be threatened by Paula and, as an extension of Temujin Kensu. And we will protect you. We protect our sources. We take that extremely seriously. So if you're worried about reaching out, just know that we're not going to do anything that jeopardizes you. We're going to talk about it. And even if you just want to give us some information off the record and you don't want to be involved, that's fine. But we are looking for that information because Scott's life mattered. Scott made a big impact on people despite living a very short time and certainly being taken away far sooner than he ever should have been. But I think we would like to do more to honor him because it's a... it would be nice to report on someone who just genuinely seemed like a good, genuine guy versus, this other hot mess of a person who, just is, again, brought misery to pretty much everyone he's ever interacted with.
I think that's it for now, right?
Yep.
Well, thank you all for listening.
We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.